So it looks like I'm live. Good morning. Welcome to my shop. Very brief tour. This is a workbench that my dad and I built about 18 months ago, give or take. It was August of 2018, somewhere in that neighborhood. Pretty simple, just 2x4s and plywood and pegboard for organization. This here is actually my old dresser from when I was growing up. My parents remodeled my bedroom after me and my siblings moved out, and so they were going to make use of it in the storage unit, and then in not the storage unit. So I took it, put some casters on the bottom of it, and now I use it for shop storage. So kind of cool to have that back in my life again. Got a couple of screw and bit storage up here. Got these on an online auction for about $2. There's 3 of them. I have an extra one down here that I haven't started using yet. Trash can at the end of the bench. All of my wood and scrap and plywood and everything is back over here. This is my pride and joy. That's the router table that I just built last weekend. Really excited about it. Really excited to work on the project today. Actually building that router table. In fact, buying the router that's underneath the routing table was all specifically so I could do this project today. So been kind of working towards it, and it's exciting to finally get it done. Also a little bit nerve-wracking that put up or shut up time. So looking forward to it. Should be a good time. Just wanted to show you something real quick to explain the purpose of the routing table. The way I have it set up right now, I actually have some pre-drilled holes in the back of the fence with bolts in it, so I can drop them in and make sure the fence is exactly lined up with where I want it to be every single time I'm going to use the table. Because the method I'm using is, I got it off a YouTube video. I believe it's called "This is Woodworking" or something along those lines. I'll leave a link in the description after this. But the gentleman had what he called the quarter method for making boxes and drawers and things like that. And the basic idea is that you set up your router table, or he used a table saw with a dado stack, but you set up your cutting implement so that you have the fence a quarter of an inch away from the blade. You have a 1/4 inch blade, and that 1/4 inch blade is a 1/4 inch deep. So that what you end up with when you cut it, let's see how good I am with the camera, is that you end up with a nice groove through the center of it like that, which is a 1/4 inch deep, a 1/4 inch wide, and a 1/4 inch from the edge. And when you set the blade up that way, you're able to make a bunch of repeatable cuts that then fit together very snugly. It fits very flush. It's pretty strong, and then obviously once you glue it together, it becomes a pretty strong joint there. And then the one thing that you will do for the end pieces, and you'll see me do this later today, is that you will turn it up on its face and cut a 1/4 inch rabbet along the edge so that you can put an end piece into that exact same slot. So that is the concept I'm working off of today. We will find out how effective it is, because this is literally the first time I've tried it. When I dialed in the fence and everything was dry fitting, that was the first time I'd actually put together the quarter stack. Pretty excited about how well that fit. So proof of concept is in. Now it's time for proof of skill. The boring part is actually going to come first. I already drew out my layout here. Again, see if I can get this in the camera well. It's going to be a pretty simple box. Hang on just a second. Put better light there for you. Pretty simple box. You can see the exploded out pieces here and here. The gray sections are where the rabbets and dados are going to be. And then obviously once you put them all together, they'll look something along the lines of that. So what I need to do is, you saw all those letters around the perimeter. I'm going to be posting those, cutting off some chunks of this 3/8 dowel to make all of those letter posts, basically. So you need to cut this out, and then need to paint this white so that they'll stand out nice against the, I got 1/2 inch birch plywood I'm going to be using. So I want the white to kind of stand out against that. So I need to cut these down to their 1/4 inch length so I can then paint them, and the paint will dry while I'm working on other stuff, hopefully keep this process moving smoothly and quickly, and not get too bored waiting around for stuff to happen. So first thing I'll be doing is cutting the 3/8 dowel. So what I'm doing right now is just setting up my miter saw. These dowel lengths I'm going to be cutting, like I said, are only going to be 1/4 of an inch long each. And having the miter saw will make it pretty easy to just make repeatable cuts on that over and over. My plan is I'm currently putting in a 0 clearance fence here on the miter saw. Since the dowel is so smooth, or so small rather, I'm a little bit worried about tear out. If you just cut something without any support behind the wood or the lumber, you can end up having those kind of splinters and stuff get kind of scraped out and shot out the back. So having a 0 clearance fence like this, I don't know how well you can see it, but the gap here in the center is only wide enough for the blade to drop through. It's exactly up against that blade. And what that means is that when I put the dowel here and cut it, as the blade is coming through, the blade doesn't register as being done with the piece until it gets to the back side of the fence. So you're not going to get that tear out through the dowel because it will have constant pressure all the way through. That's the theory. In getting ready to set this up, I did realize that I never made a 0 clearance fence for the bottom gap here, so it's possible I'll still get tear outs in this bottom corner. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any plywood to use in there. Project for another day. Nothing to be done about it right now. So what I will be doing right now is actually I'm going to lock my blade back in place. so that I can measure out a 1/4 inch and secure a stop block there. And actually, all right, so what this will do, by locking this guy in place here, so what I've done is I've measured a 1/4 inch from the edge of the blade to this point here. So now I don't need to make a bunch of individual 1/4 inch measurements down the dowel and then try to line up my marks perfectly with the edge of the blade. All I need to do is push this dowel right up against the stop block, and I know that the length on the other side is a 1/4 inch. So this will make it really quick and easy for me to just zap through the 12 1/4 inch lengths that I need. Now, in saying that, I'm realizing that zero clearance fence I was mentioning, these 1/4 inch dowels are going to drop right in there, which means that after I'm done cutting all this, I need to take off the power supply here and shake it like a salt shaker to try to get these out. But that's a problem for future bends. So it's going to get noisy. I'm going to turn all this stuff on, make my 12 cuts, and then we'll get to work on painting these. Well, that didn't work like I planned. In many cases, I ended up just shattering the dial in half. Yeah, terrible camera work, but you get the idea. All right, so I need to come up with a new plan. Or maybe I just need to keep cutting until I end up with 12 good pieces. Let me see what I can find, see how many good ones we got out of that. Sorry, other thing I'm trying to figure out is whether or not I like this height. Because I've got a good one here that came out. All right, there's my little 1/4 inch dowel that I was, or 1/4 inch height of a 3/8 inch dowel that I was looking at. I think that looks right. I think that's what I'm going to go with. As long as I don't lose them. Always unplug it before you start putting your hands in the blade. None of y'all need to hear that, but apparently I do, because I was about to just slip this in here willy-nilly. All right. Made 12 cuts. Got 4 good posts. Let's do this again, shall we? Loud noises. All right, so there's my 12 little wooden dowels. Considering I made about 20 cuts, that probably means I'm going to be finding these little things for days and days to come. Yep, 13. Probably find when I sweep up the floor here at the end of the day. 14. Just means I've got spares, so when I make my next one, I'm halfway there. All right. So that is everything I'm currently working on with this. Just going to temporarily move this guy out of the way. I will need him again in a moment, but I want to use my workbench to do the painting here. Uh-oh. Looks like I got some chat activity. Hi, Mom. Sorry I didn't notice your chats earlier. And Josh, apparently, although I'm only seeing Mom's chats, unless Josh is watching and that's why Mom is saying hi to him. Anyway, hey, y'all. All right. Now, the big problem here is that all of the painting supplies I have were bought when we first bought the house. We were repainting the rooms, so I don't really have small, fine painting supplies. The closest thing I'm going to have is this guy, which is still a 2-inch brush, and you can see it's not super precise. Kind of tempted. So this is a like a sponge edger. You normally put it on one of these. Makes it really great for being able to work up into corners for cutting in and things like that. But I'm thinking that what I might do is actually just get paint on this, maybe kind of clamp it to the table and have the paint on here, and then just take the dowels and roll them over it. Use this more as just kind of a paint holder, and then move the dowels over it as opposed to trying to somehow hold the dowels in place and apply the paint to them. I think that might be my best option, so that's what I'm going to go with. Let's see how this turns out. So this is the, well, surface application I will be using. It's actually a 3-in-1 primer, not an actual paint. This is something Granddaddy introduced me to. My first Christmas married to Leah. I had gotten her a rose bush when I went to Kroger one day getting groceries. And I'm a little bit incapable of not getting treats. So I grabbed her a rose bush, and it was an actual potted rose bush. And turns out that she's just like a green arm because she just made that thing take off. Inspiration there was that Granddaddy and I decided to build Leah a garden table, a plant table, because we lived in a little small 1-bedroom apartment. Obviously didn't have anywhere we could do a garden outside, so just made a table for her to be able to do that in the house. When we were working on that, Granddaddy introduced me to this stuff. Obviously not sponsored by anyone, not cool enough for that. But works really well. It goes on well, and it will provide a nice white color. I'm going for kind of a, rustic, age, distressed kind of look, so I don't want a super pretty, high, clean polish, because I'm actually not even going to put a stain on the main box, the birch. I'm just going to apply some spray lacquer to it just to protect it. So since I'm not really going for a high finish on the box, I didn't think it made sense to put a really high glossy coat of paint on the posts either. So that's why I'm just going to go with the primer. It holds up very well. I'll post a picture of Leah's table because I really like the way that it's kind of naturally aged and distressed a little bit over the, goodness, that was Christmas of 15, so the 4-ish years since I gave that to her. So Anyway, all that rambling to say, I'm using a primer, not a paint, although I'll probably keep saying that I'm painting these. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get working on that. Breakfast. I'm getting stuff out of my paint drawer, by the way. Since I'm furloughed, I was thinking of maybe getting a job at TGI Fridays. Test number 1. Not mad at it. I think that'll do pretty well. So one thing I'm trying to do, and not being successful with, is to leave one of these flat surfaces bare, because I'm planning to glue these to the top of the box I'm making. But obviously, I shouldn't say obviously because I didn't know this, so maybe a couple of y'all don't know this. Glue does not work well on paint, so it would the glue would prefer to be glue on, wood on wood, not wood on paint on wood. So I'm trying to avoid getting too much paint on one of the faces. I'm currently not being successful with that attempt. But we'll see what we can do here. That worked better. Maybe a little too good. So since I ended up with extras of these dowels, what I'm going to end up doing is just painting all of them, and then I'll pick out the 12 that turned out the best, and those are the 12 that I'll use at the end. I'm actually really happy with how well the system is working. Should be a shock to no one that the method I like best is also the one that gets me the messiest. You may have noticed I pulled out that plastic sheet when I first opened up my paint drawer. Um, my plan, um, since obviously I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting and routing and everything, that's going to kick up a lot of dust. And not trying to get sawdust stuck to all this wet white paint. Excuse me. I'm putting all the painted items on this plastic sheet so I can take it up like into the kitchen or somewhere else in the main house to keep it kind of protected and safe. And that way, I can let them dry out of sight, out of mind. Because obviously, y'all don't want to watch paint dry. Not sorry. All right. So there are my 14 posts. Give me a moment while I do some quick cleanup upstairs. We'll be right back. Sorry, you're gonna have to watch the paint dry for now. And I'm back. All right. So, I'm afraid if I try to show this too clearly, I'll end up just dumping them, but there are my 14 posts. Once they dry, we'll see which ones look the best, and those are the ones that I will make sure I use for the box. Alright, so proof of concept on the posts. So that means that theoretically, if the paint doesn't dry quite the way that I want it to, I can still go ahead and sorry, forgive the toy shell. If the paint doesn't dry quite right, I can just reapply another coat to it, obviously. I'm still just really tickled about this. So, next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the plywood for the box itself. Sorry. Finally learning to clean as I go. Not that good at it. Alright, so, like I mentioned, the plywood I got is a 2 foot by 4 foot piece of 1/2 inch birch that I grabbed at Lowe's. It's really hard to see. I should have used like a Sharpie instead of pencil, but this is actual size. These are obviously 1/4 inch squares here on the graph paper, so you can see that the total height of the box is going to be about 1.5 inches. So what I need to do is rip a 1.5 inch long strip off the end of one of the pieces of plywood. Pardon me. Go. So I'm going to put a 1.5 inch strip off the end of this piece of plywood. The interior dimensions of this is going to be 3 inches by 9 inches. When you take into account the width of the lumber, the pieces actually need to be 11 by 3.5. So that comes to 22, 29 inches, which is obviously just too long for the 24 inch short piece. So I'm going to need to rip the entire length of the board. I'll have a lot of scrap kind of left over at the end. But that's okay, because if this goes well, I can just make more, and I can use the leftovers at the end on the second box. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. Give me a quick second while I set up my circular saw. So big thank you to my in-laws, the Hendrickses. They bought me the Craig Rip Cut system, which allows you to make long rip cuts like that on a piece of plywood, even though you don't have a table saw. So what you do is you slide it on here, you set it to the length you want to cut, which, as I just said, in my case, is 1.5 inches. And lock it down. So, in case you can't see, this is a long ruler. cannot tell that on here. Anyway, it's a long ruler. Right here, there's a little red line that lets you know what the length is. And when you set it there, it tells you that between the side of your blade and this fence, what that distance is going to be for when you're actually cutting the lumber. So this will be a 1.5 inch cut to get the length that we need. You'll also notice that when I was pulling out the plywood, I grabbed this piece of insulation foam here. The reason I did that is similar to the reason why I put the zero clearance fence on here. By cutting on the foam instead of, suspended between two sawhorses or something like that, it gives better support to the plywood, so it's less likely to kind of, get towards the end and fold and snap or collapse it and bind on the blade. But then also, as you can tell from all these grooves in here, you set your blade depth just slightly deeper than the depth of the plywood, and that way it's kind of acting as a zero clearance fence again. So the blade is still going into another cutting surface and not tearing out the bottom of the plywood. Oh, cool. It'd be really awesome if Granddaddy does tune in. Thanks for the heads up, Mom. So unfortunately, this is just a 2x2 sheet. Obviously, I have a 4-foot long board here. So what I'll need to do is cut about 2 inches, or 2 feet, 2 inches, 2 feet rather, and then kind of reposition the board and cut again. Man, looking at this now, that's some really lovely grain in the wood. Makes me wish I was cutting something a little bit bigger so that I could show off more. Obviously, only taking 1.5 inches off the edge here isn't going to do too much to show that off. But something in the future, I don't want to try to play with that. I think I'll probably cut from this side so I can preserve as much of this contrast for a future project as possible. Yeah, I'll cut from this end. This is also a 1-inch thick piece, so I'm actually going to grab I'm making a total mess of everything behind me. Oh. Another piece of plywood. This is 3/4 inch thick, so obviously it will be a little bit of a gap there at the end. But I'm really just using this as something to support, kind of think of it as an outfeed table, something to support the end of the plywood that I'm not actually cutting at the moment. If I had a piece of 1/4 inch scrap, I'd use that too. Well, that's not exactly right, but I got some pegboard left over. I'll use that as just a little bit extra support there. All right. So a good shot of my plumber's craft. Oh shoot. Give me a second. A lot of my family asked me to be sending them pictures because obviously they're not giving up their entire day to watch just a live stream. So I promised them I'd be taking pictures so that I could send those pictures in to give them updates at the end of the day. So give me a half second while I play photographer, and then I will get back to the fun stuff. Right. Don't tell anybody. I'm gonna have to fudge some of this stuff so it looks like I'm actually doing the work. I really did make a mess over here. All right, let me think through this. I cut that down. I showed you guys how the quarter method works, or at least is supposed to work. I still really am just tickled by how, I mean, it really is just a great friction fit. Honestly, the box isn't going to be using that much. Like I'm not going to be, it's not going to get a lot of torsion or carrying anything super heavy. So I, if I was being super lazy, you could get away with just pressing that together and getting that nice friction fit. But anyway, I'm going to do it right. Don't tell granddaddy on me. I'll do it right. So I showed you guys how the friction fit works. I cut the dowels down. Explain the zero clearance. I can do that with that same picture. Let me run snap a picture of the painted posts. I'm going up too close on you guys. Let me run grab a picture of the painted posts as they are drying up there. Then I'll take a couple of quick snapshots of this setup, and then I'll get back to cut. Be right back. Oops. All right. So spoiler alert, the next thing I'll be working on after this is running the router table. So I'm just plugging up my shop vac so that it's ready to do the dust collection here, same way I had it set up for the dust collection on the circular saw a minute ago. All right, loud noises. So again, just to refresh, I'm going to go ahead and make this cut. It's a 4-foot board. My foam's only about 2 feet, so I have to cut about half the length, and then pause and shuffle the board backwards, and then cut another half the length. Oh, and before I do that, I'm going to readjust the depth gauge on the saw so that it doesn't cut too deep into the foam, because I mean, it's a sacrificial piece of foam. They're super cheap. I'll just replace it when it's destroyed, but there's no sense in destroying it faster than it needs to be. So give me a second. Oh, booty. Again, don't have it plugged in when you're messing near the blade. That's how bad things happen. So when Dad and I were making this workbench, this is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. I'm pretty sure. We double check that. Make sure I'm not making up numbers. Anyway, I'm going to use this as my reference for it's actually just shy of 3/4 of an inch. It's not exactly right, but it's the important thing is that it's more than a 1/2 inch deep. So what I'm going to do is set my circular saw blade so that it's at the depth of this bench, and then that way, it will be just a little bit deeper than my actual plywood, which means it'll cut into the foam and all the way through the plywood, and we'll get a nice clean cut there. So. Last week when I was using this, I was cutting the 3/4 inch plywood for the router table. So obviously I had to make it a little bit deeper than what I'm working on today. Yeah, pretty good. All right. There's that. I'm going to reinstall the Craig. to the ripping, but hopefully not the tearing. All right. Loud noises. All right. That has run me almost to the end of the styrofoam, so I'm going to readjust now. Probably end up doing this in 3 sections. Just be super careful that I'm completely supported by the styrofoam all the way through. Probably being a little bit overly cautious, but better that than being sloppy and messing it up. So. Excuse me, get a telephone call. Hey, sweetheart. How you doing? Yeah, just All right, I'm back, and I just got in trouble. When I got up this morning, Leah had already gotten up and gone to the bar. And I was supposed to have emptied the dishwasher and cleaned up the kitchen. And I was too excited to come out here and do this. So I didn't finish my chores. So give me just half a second. I didn't quite cut through the end here. Let me re-slice this beginning chunk. I was holding the blade kind of at an angle, so it didn't actually cut as deep as it was supposed to. So give me just a second. Loud noises again. There it is. All right. There it is. 4 feet long, 1.5 inches wide, 1/2 inch thick. So we will call a pause to this. Well, no, his mom said Granddaddy's wanting to chime in. So I am going to leave this running while I go empty the dishwasher real quick. And y'all are going to be bored by that. All right, Mom, I see you're back in the chat again. Let Granddaddy know that I'm going to start restreaming again in a second. I'll send out another message on Facebook so you can kind of keep him updated. Probably shoot out an email as well. But that is the prep work done. So when I come back, what I will be doing is running this through the router table to make the first long dado, because all of them will need a dado at the bottom to put the 1/4 inch plywood piece in to make my like the floor essentially of the. I don't like that. There's a void there. Anyway, sorry. Need to make a 1/4 inch dado along the entire bottom so we can put basically the floor of the box in. So all of them will need that same dado cut. So what I'm going to do is just take this and run a long dado down the entire length. I will then come back over here to my miter saw and again set the stop block so I can make 2 11-inch pieces. Then I'll remove the stop block and do 2 3.5-inch pieces, and those will be the 4 walls. I'm noticing, obviously with this being a piece of plywood, there are some spots here that have some voids in them. So I'll need to probably avoid these chunks. I'll probably just slice this off and not use that end. There's a little void there. If they're only in one side, like this one, there's not a corresponding void on the other side. So this can just be the bottom. But this particular void on this end is actually all the way through that layer of the plywood. So this piece I'll probably chop off and not use. Yeah, we'll kind of go from there. So, Mom, like I said, let Granddaddy know. I will start streaming again in a second here once I'm done making my mess and cleaning up and everything. Ooh, there's another person watching. Who is watching? I can't tell these things. In case you guys can't tell, this is my first time ever using YouTube Live, so I have no idea who is here. Ah, Ryan. What's up, Ryan? You tuned in just in time for me to turn it off. Sorry, man. All right. Like I said, I will post another something on Facebook again. I'll probably shoot out to the family. I'll send out another email. So if you want to tell Granddaddy to keep an eye on his email, yeah, you turned it in just the right time. So if y'all want to keep an eye on the email from the family, for those of you, if there is anyone non-family that's watching, just keep an eye on Facebook. I'll post another link when I go live again. Should probably only be half an hour-ish, something like that.
because I got to empty the dishwasher, reload it with some other stuff. Yeah, I got in trouble. I should have. Anyway, I'll be back.